We are WNST, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore. We are Baltimore positive. We are taking the show out on the road after what we think will be a victory over the Cleveland Browns. Certainly, everyone in the wagering community seems to believe that. Speaking of wagering, we have Maryland lottery tickets, and it's also Responsible Gaming Month. Had a great conversation with Will Hinman, a long conversation with a real gambler. I mean, a guy who went to the bottom of the earth and comes back, and now if you call 800 Gamble, it's the guy you get. So just want to point that out as we get ready for week 2 of the NFL matchups and, of course, college football all weekend long. I will have Raven scratch-offs on Tuesday at the Beaumont in Catonsville for the Maryland Crab Cake Tour. Tastiness is counting down. I think we're down to number 5 right now, which was the coconut shrimp. Makes me want the coconut shrimp to go over to Coco's right now. Might have to get back over there this weekend and get some ribs and some coleslaw and some coconut shrimp. And I would advise you do the same thing. Luke Jones can do that, except can't do that on Sunday. He's got game day duty in the teeny weeny Kevin Byrne press box up in the corner where they have one seat for WNST, apparently one seat for some other media entities as well. And we will witness something, I guess, Luke, that you know Joe. I know Joe. We've seen Joe throw. Were you around here when Flacco was drafted? Did you came like in '08 into my life, maybe the summer, spring of '08? Like, I think you two have been in my life the exact period of time. You're almost the same age as well as my kid. This is an unlikely scenario that 7, 8 years ago, 3, 4 years ago, 1, 2 years ago, that we would see Joe Flacco come into Baltimore as a starting quarterback again.
Yeah, I mean, 7 years ago, I don't think there was much surprise there if he were to come back into Baltimore, but just how his career has gone. And just to clarify, 2009
9. So Flacco came first.
yeah, he came
Okay.
first in spring of 2009 and training camp 2009 and at McDaniel was my first training camp that I covered. I mean, I've been to plenty of training camp practices prior to that, but as a media
But
member,
you
but
knew no training camp before Joe.
no. I
Right.
mean, and just that experience of going to Westminster and all that. But it is wild to think about it because you think of how Joe Flacco's career has played out since being traded by the Ravens, since being replaced by Lamar Jackson. He had the year in Denver, which did not go very well. Remember, he got hurt, had the neck, a neck issue, and ended up uh, finishing the year on IR, I believe. And since then, he's mostly been a backup quarterback, right? I mean, he's not that he hasn't made starts, but until the end of that 2023 season with that crazy run he had with Cleveland, where he literally was on his couch at right around Thanksgiving, and then he's starting games and playing at a high level and helping the Browns make the playoffs.
Throwing
But
passes to his father and his kids in the backyard, literally.
exactly. So this is very it's surprising even looking at it through the lens of him just coming back as a member of the opposition in Baltimore. Of course, the Ravens went up to the Meadowlands a few years ago and he started that opener for the Jets at that point. But it's different when he's coming back to town. It's different when you have the 30th. It's not the 30th anniversary. It's the 30th season being celebrated on Sunday with some of the former teammates and former Ravens players and all
What are
the
they?
non.
You got to tell me what they're doing. I don't get the press releases from Chad Steele anymore, so I literally don't even know. I was informed by like a Cleveland reporter. They're like, "Yeah, they're bringing Ozzy out. They're going to stuff it back at Cleveland this week." In the same way that the Oilers, and the Texans, they wear their jerseys when they play each other. It's sort of like, why don't we just put Art's bust up onto the screen too? Which I'm sure it's going to be a part of it. So, doing this at a Cleveland game is a little. I don't know.
I actually wanted to bring that up to you because I was even debating that with some of the other Ravens reporters on the beat.
We stole their team. It's in poor taste.
I don't love it. At the same time, I'm not going to see. I'll push back right away at this is nowhere in the stratosphere of the Tennessee Titans wearing old Houston Oilers jerseys against the Texans. I
That's
think
trashy. I
yeah,
agree.
this is not even close to that. I think it's the first game of the season, which is a logical time to do that. However, I'm not going to sit here and say, well, you couldn't have done it against Detroit next week for Monday Night Football, right? A national TV game, all that. So,
Bring Ray Lewis out at
you know,
halftime and do all that. Yeah.
I don't think it's something that they did deliberately as much as it's the first game of the season. And generally speaking, over the history when they've celebrated the 10th season, the 15th, the 20th, whatever, they've generally done it the first game of the season. So, but at the same time, I'm not going to sit here and diminish what people in Cleveland felt like when I had a father and grandparents who cried the morning the Colts left town, uh,
That makes two of us.
41 years ago. So I always want to be sensitive to that. Do I think it's the end of the world? Do I think it's like the most classless thing or anything? No, I think that's hyperbole.
But I don't
I
even
think,
know what they're doing. So like literally they're doing
and
a thing. I don't know what the
right. I
thing
mean,
even is.
they're recognizing the 30th season, and going back to the 2005 season, they've always done this for the 10th season, not the 10th
They had a
anniversary.
big X with my
Yeah,
PSL when they
and
sent that one
they
out. I
did the
remember that.
same thing in 2015. The way it seems, I mean, at least in week one, they did not wear that. I wonder if you go back and say, well, 2005 was a dud of a season, 2015 was a dud of a season. Let's not do that again. But there's nothing. I mean, they are recognizing the 1975 Colts. They're actually going to be
Well, I'll be
recognized in the
recognizing
game.
them because Lydell Mitchell's coming on
Yeah,
this weekend, and also just I was a '75 Colts guy. So Clark Judge, if you've been listening the last couple of weeks, we've talked about Burt Jones and the legend of Burt Jones, and anybody sees Bruce Laird around town or Stan White or any of those guys, Howard Stevens through the course of our lifetime, I am thrilled to be spending Saturday with the '75 Colts. Thrilled.
yeah, very cool. I mean, it's an awesome opportunity. I like that the Ravens are recognizing the 75 Colts, right? I mean, I think it's important to always remember the old Baltimore Colts, right? I mean,
Can I give you a list of the names because I haven't done a plug for them, and I've been
sure,
trying to get Bird on, and
sure.
it's a bull roast. It's Saturday afternoon. If you're interested in going, it's Babe Ruth birthplace Babe Ruth Museum is a part of this. It's over at Union Craft, right on 83, right next to where Joe Washington used to work. Expected attendees. So let me give you some names here for anybody who's my age or older who would appreciate this. And Luke, I don't know if you know this. I have like a Colts hat that was the helmet hat that had the stripe in it from like 1981, 82. Never got the Oiler one. I always wanted it, but I have the Colt one. And I took it out to the last Colts reunion, which my wife doesn't remember being a part of, which might mean it was longer than 22 years ago. I do remember Lenny Moore's son had just passed and they did a fundraiser and it was around the Colts. It was Corralling the Colts, I think it was called. And a lot of guys came back, but I'm talking about like way before I knew you. I don't know if it was 20 years ago or 20 because it's all running together for me, but I took that hat out and it had a bunch of guys sign it. I think Art Donovan signed it that night because he was alive and there and well. But this is where we are in 2025. So the 75 Colts, Roger Carr, Fred Cook, Dan Dickel, John Dutton, whom I've never met, Joe Ehrman, whom I love, Ken Huff, Marshall Johnson, who I always loved as a kickoff returner, number 80, Burt Jones, Burt Jones. George Coons was my dad's favorite player. My dad loved George Coons. My dad loved offensive linemen. He loved Ken Mendenhall too, but Ken Mendenhall's not coming. Bruce Laird, Daryl Luce, Tom McLeod, Don McCauley. Give the ball to McCauley at the goal line. Lydell Mitchell, Doug Nettles, Howard Stevens, David Taylor, Bob Van Duyn, Rick Volk, who I haven't seen recently, and Stan White. So there you have it. It's Saturday afternoon, 3 to 6. It says dress is casual, but I'm wearing my Baltimore Colts belt buckle. So I don't know if that's casual or not, Luke. But no, but I wanted to throw that in because we haven't done anything with the 75 Colts, and I wish we had done more. But they're being honored on the field as well on Sunday. So this is going to be something, right?
Yeah, and just to follow up, because you had mentioned what are they doing? I mean, you mentioned Ozzie Newsome's a legend of the game. I mean, I don't care who's coming into Baltimore, the Browns, whoever, Alabama could come into like Ozzie is a perfectly acceptable legend of the game at any given Sunday. But at halftime, then they're having a number of Ravens legends. There's going to be a mixed reality show on the video boards. The band's going to perform, and look, I mean, they're doing a celebration for 30 years of the Ravens being in Baltimore. The Browns are on the other side again.
I want to come. How much are tickets?
Well, you'd have to look in the secondary market for that. I mean, look, there's a lot of frustration this week, and we'll get into that part of it here as you and I are breaking this one down. But it's also amazing to kind of think about this because, especially me, I mean, as someone who, I mean, the Colts left when I was an infant. I was literally 5 months old, whatever it was, March of 1984. And to think about those years as a kid, hearing the stories of the old Colts, like the 75 Colts. I mean, yeah, it was more Unitas and Lenny Moore, and my grandfather loved Raymond Berry and all of that. But, those mid 70s teams with March of Rhoda, and I mean, how fun that was. And I think it's important to celebrate those teams as well. That, okay, they didn't win a Super Bowl, right? One of my favorite teams with the Orioles as a very young kid was the 1989 why not team, right? I mean, they didn't even make the playoffs, but that was so unexpected. And when you look at the beginning of that Colts run in the mid 70s, that was unexpected. I mean, uh, it's fun to celebrate that. And especially when you're talking about a franchise that, yes, the franchise itself left in 84, but we all know older fans and I don't want to let myself in that I experienced it, but I was the generation after the generation that absolutely loved the Colts. And
This is a little weird to be like the Rams and the Cardinals getting together in St. Louis.
yeah,
I mean,
and again,
the Bermuda Triangle of the Colts and the Browns and the Ravens kind of all coming together on Sunday in some way now that they're bringing all the 75 Colts back. Because Burt Jones got nothing to do with the Ravens and nothing to do with the Browns.
sure. So, but I mean, I think that's what was always so important when when the Browns came to Baltimore and became the Ravens. They
That we did not take that brown helmet. Right.
Right. I mean, I never, I think back to it now, and that's why, like, to me, the Tennessee Titans wearing the Oilers gear is beyond. It's neat seeing it because it's a gorgeous uniform. It's in poor taste, and the thought is, if you're someone living in Nashville, what link do you have to Earl Campbell, right? What link do you have to Warren Moon other than just maybe you
But
just
they did
admired
wear
them from
Steve
afar?
McNair's jerseys when they got
They
there, and they
did,
did
and
wear
they
the Oilers
did,
jerseys.
and
So
that's fair,
Eddie
and that's
George
fair.
wore that jersey, right?
But
So
that's also that's the problem though with
correct.
taking that.
That's the problem with Jack Youngblood being on the wall in St. Louis when I'm there
Right,
and saying, "What the hell's he doing on the
right,
wall?"
exactly, and it's why it's weird now, like for
Ernest
Kurt
Binder.
Warner. Kurt Warner suddenly is recognized in L.A., right? I mean, it just doesn't make sense. Again, the Cleveland perspective, I I get that. I think it's this over the top classless, like, oh, you shouldn't be doing, I
It's the
I
nature of
understand.
the league. It's
Yeah,
classless to pull your team out of St. Louis if you're from Missouri and move it to LA, but
sure.
we just get by classless every day. You know what I mean? So
But at the same time, I also understand it's the first game of the season. I don't put it this way. I don't think there was any premeditated idea of, hey, let's look at the calendar. When are we playing the Browns? Oh, that's when we want to do our
I'm just
30th.
telling you, I'm 3 for 3 with talking to Cleveland people this weekend. I'm doing Kenny Rhoda's show in Canton later on,
I get
and
that they're
and
going to
they're
be
all
mad.
like,
I understand
this
that.
is the Ravens being classless 30 years later. Why? Like, what's the
Yeah,
point?
I mean,
Especially when Cleveland hadn't won anything. But that being said, let's get onto the field. Joe
sure.
Flacco can come back up here and kick sand in John Harbaugh's eyes and steal a football game. They've had problems with their kicker, but they played a really good game on Sunday. I watched the game. They're not
Their defense
somebody.
played well. Their
Well,
defense played well.
I would say this. Munch said they're a 3 or 4 win team. 4.5's the number in Vegas. And he's like, I'm taking calls all day from gamblers that are betting the over because they're just like, how can we not win 5 games? You know what I mean? If you're a Browns fan, you put $100 on a year. By the way, it is responsible gambling month, so do it responsibly. But I'm just saying, if you're a Browns fan, what do you got? You ain't winning the Super Bowl, you know that. But you might beat the Ravens on Sunday, and you almost
Yeah.
beat the Bengals last week.
I mean, I think if you're a Browns fan, I mean, and I say this with no disrespect to Joe Flacco, but he's 40 years old. You're kind of looking at this thing and you're saying, okay, when's it going to be time for Dylan Gabriel? When's it going to be time for Shador Sanders, right? I mean, or are we just going to tank so badly that, okay, we're going to draft a quarterback next April because we're the Browns and that's what we typically do at least every other year, right? I mean, that's just kind of the way it works. But their defense played very well. I mean, if you watch Cincinnati in that game, they, I mean, especially the second half, they did nothing. I mean, go look. They literally, the yardage total was just nothing. So this is a Browns defense that when it's healthy, and they have a couple guys banged up this week, but they're limited practice, so I would assume you'll see them play. But they've got a really talented defense, and put it this way. That's not me suggesting they're going to shut down this Ravens offense because again, until the final couple drives on Sunday night, we were talking about a Ravens team that scored 40 points, right? And ran all over the place. And Lamar Jackson, when he did threw very effectively. And Zay Flowers had a career night and all of
If they
that.
score 40 on Sunday, they're not going to lose.
Well, there's that. But I guess the point I was trying to make is the Browns aren't going to shut them down. This isn't what I'm implying whatsoever. But the Ravens are going to have a much more difficult time trying to score 40 on Cleveland unless Joe Flacco throws them the ball a couple times. Their running backs put it on the turf, that kind of scenario. Because I think Cleveland has a more talented, first level to third level defense than what Buffalo has, which Buffalo had, Ed Oliver was amazing and made huge plays. But let's face it, that Buffalo defense as I said to you even before the game and even breaking it down after, on paper, that's not a good matchup because they're undersized. They kind of they're built for the more traditional style of 2025 NFL offense, whereas the Ravens, they want to play heavy. They're going to give the ball to Derrick Henry. Lamar is going to keep it, all of that. So, and Cleveland's also a team that is used to seeing the Ravens offense twice a year. Again, that doesn't mean they're going to shut them down. I think the Ravens will score plenty of points. But
well, that's the biggest case here is our boy Jimmy Schwartz over in Arbutus is putting something together and having chess pieces like Myles Garrett to wreck key plays, right? I mean, wrecking a play and getting the ball back. Just have 6 plays where you wreck them on third down and force them into a punt, force them into a field position game, force them into it's 17-13 at halftime, and it's a game.
And then see if the Ravens do what they did last week then, right?
Look, the Ravens are capable of boat racing anyone, but good defenses and familiar defenses usually create closer games. Closer games create who's our kicker? Are we really going to be able to run the ball? We have to. Yeah, we have Derrick Henry. We have Lamar Jackson. Yeah. We punted, fumbled, and punted in the fourth quarter in Buffalo when it mattered with a 15-point lead. So, you could talk, we run heavy. Then run heavy in the fourth quarter or run so heavy early that you don't need to worry about it. But this team's had a real problem with the boat race and then falling asleep in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, even several days later, I'm still struggling with this because, and there's a lot that's been said from the fan base, from the media. Some points are better than others. I think some of it's irrelevant to the conversation. I've seen people bringing up the 2014 playoff game. It's like, let's go back. Let's not use revisionist history here. I don't put that on John Harbaugh. That was kind of Ozzie Newsome because they entered that season with 2 off-injured starting corners and their number 3 and number 4 corners. On paper, the plan was Shockey Brown and Asa Jackson. And then the injuries piled up. And, you're facing Tom Brady in the divisional round? Yeah, he's probably going to chuck the ball all over the field on you at that point. So,
and they did have a 2-touchdown lead in that game.
They
as
did.
Joe would point out. So
they did, but they also had Rashawn Melvin and guys like that playing corners. So I want to, for me, let's stick to the last few years because there's plenty of meat on the bone to talk about the last few years, right?
I only want to talk about Marlon Humphrey and Ronnie Stanley and Lamar Jackson and
think,
Mark Andrews.
One of the more interesting comments that I heard on Wednesday, we had a chance to talk to Marlon Humphrey, who at times is not the easiest guy to get to talk in the locker room, but when he does, generally he's good talking about this kind of stuff. And he made the comment, I thought it was very interesting. The wording that he used, that John Harbaugh said they haven't matured yet as a football team. And more specifically, Zach Orr talking about them needing to mature as a defense. And when I say maturity, I don't think the connotation here is guys' character or guys that aren't. I think it means maturing, knowing how to play together as 11 on the field at one point in time. And Humphrey went into, the mentality that everyone has on the defense in that spot is everyone wants to make the play to win the game or to seal the game or to shut the door, however you want to categorize it, right? However, whatever semantics you want to use for finishing out a lead when you have a lead in the fourth quarter, and implied that some guys were kind of not doing freelancing might be too strong a word, but not necessarily playing their assignment in the way that you're trying to complement one another, right? In the way that the pass rush, yeah, you want to get to Josh Allen, but not in a way that's going to allow him to leak out and you lose contain and he's able to extend plays the way that he did. So they do a lot of the cage rushing, right? Which is you know, close the pocket, but do it in a way that's going to keep him in the pocket, right? So, obviously on the back end of the defense and the different coverages that they played that didn't work, and we know what happened with Jair Alexander. I thought Marlon did not bring him up by name, so I don't want to put words into his mouth, but he made a comment that Zach Orr said, guys, we're not going to go through this again like we did last year where guys are going to be getting second chances and all of that. I think the implication is talking about Eddie Jackson and Marcus Williams. Eddie Jackson didn't make it through last year. Marcus Williams, of course, was cut after the season. But I think that,
and Kyle Hamilton was pulled off the line and called
sure,
to play in the
sure.
back.
Yeah, all the adjustments. They benched Trenton Simpson post bye week and used a timeshare of Malik Harrison. And
Well,
Chris
got
Moore, the
Ardarius
linebacker.
Washington,
Sure,
into a position
sure.
too. Yeah.
So,
yeah.
but I just thought it was interesting to hear that, and to hear him speak, to hear a couple of the other guys speak. I thought a couple days later we would hear much more of a tone of, guys, it was one game. The Buffalo Bills are really, really good. Look, that's true. If you would ask me my assessment of the Ravens on Sunday night, the Ravens defense with 10 minutes to go on Sunday night, I would have told you this. Yeah, the defense definitely has some work to do. There's no doubt about that. But you know what? They're going up against Josh Allen and the Bills, right? I mean, you're talking about one of the very best in the league at quarterback and one of the best offenses in the league. So we also have to understand you're not going to shut them down as though you're the 2000 Ravens and it's Spurgeon win and the 2000 Cleveland Browns, right? So, but the final 10 minutes of that game and really the fourth quarter, but specifically the last few drives, I mean, my goodness, you can't have that. And you could tell there for week 2, this felt a little bit, as far as the response, even and hearing these guys reflect on Wednesday. I mean, Kyle Van Noy even acknowledged, he said, look, normally it's a 24-hour rule. This was a 48-hour rule kind of game for us because that's how below the bar it was for us in the fourth quarter. And we're doing everything we can to get back on track. We will get back on track. But I think it was so jarring for them because it was the first game of the season, because it was against Buffalo again. I mean, look, this Buffalo game was very different than the one back in January. The one in January, they had a lead in that game for about 5 minutes total, right? They were playing from behind in that game that entire night in Buffalo. Whereas this game,
I think that made it easier to accept that they lost.
Yeah, right.
They lost this game as a playoff game at home.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
No
it would have been Oilers Bills 35 years ago. No question about
it. So that's where, again, everything kind of gets lumped together. And look, I mean, the Ravens have to wear it, right? I mean, when you lose a game like that, you have to wear it. It's a long week. There's no doubt about that. But it was interesting to hear the reaction that usually by Wednesday, guys are like, guys, that was last week. We're on the Cleveland, the proverbial, Belichick saying on to Cincinnati a decade ago and how that's become a cliche for teams to not have to look back at the previous game. But I think there was very much a sense of like, guys, we prepared all spring and summer to face the Bills the first night, opening night, and our offense did everything they did, and we go out there and play like that in the fourth quarter. I mean, that's just, Hamilton said after the game, when he saw the statistics, up on the scoreboard, and he said he wanted to throw up seeing how many yards Josh Allen had. So, this Cleveland offense does not, Joe Flacco is not Josh Allen, especially at this point in his career. He's not going to run around like Josh Allen can. So it's a much different matchup. That said, you still need to go out there and play good football, and you need to play a good, disciplined assignment football, which very much the implication, hearing Marlon Humphrey and a couple other guys talk, they weren't doing at the end of the game, right? I mean, Marlon Humphrey, it was interesting for everyone that just wants to blame the coaching staff. And look, the coaching staff has to wear this too. Let me be clear about that. But you and I have talked about this a lot. This isn't a Raven or an Orioles thing. This is a sports fandom in 2025. And I'll throw media in there as well, at least a segment of
What's
it.
What's left of us?
Well, that always wants to praise the players for wins, blame the coaches for losses, right? And there's way more nuance. But Marlon Humphrey went out of his way to say he thought the calls that were made in crunch time, he had no issue with it. He thought the calls were right. He said they had gone over those same scenarios in practice, and he said they didn't execute it. So it'll be interesting to see what happens this week in terms of, I don't think there'll be drastic changes, but I will say this. I'm interested to see what's going to happen with Jair Alexander this week because he struggled so badly. And John Harbaugh even acknowledged the lack of practice time and that probably playing a role. I wouldn't be shocked if Jair Alexander has a far diminished role compared to what he and in fairness, he didn't play a whole lot in the first half on
Well,
Sunday
it's
night.
can you trust him?
And that's the
That's
thing.
it.
But
Yeah.
at the same time, and this goes back to the roster construction, you heard me talk a whole lot about one of my concerns on defense was what? The number 3 safety spot. They at this point in time, Sanusi Kane is their number 3 safety. Now maybe he's out there more on Sunday, right? I mean, did not have a presence on other than playing special teams.
Also, how they want to play the Browns and stopping the run because
Right, and that's a different part of it as well. But at the same time, I will be interested because they did so much for cornerback dime. So when they went into dime, which means you have 6 defensive backs, they played much more 4 corners on the field. So it was Wiggins and Alexander on the outside, Marlon Humphrey at the nickel as he typically is, and then they had Awuzie at the dime spot. So that's how they approached their dime package, and then they still had 2 safeties. Well, if you're going to scale back Jair Alexander for the time being, and I'm not implying he's going to be benched permanently, but I do wonder if it's kind of take a step back and pump the brakes with him for the next week or two until he gets acclimated and practices a little bit more. Well, who's that guy then? Are you putting TJ Tampa out there? Are you going more 3 safety looks and Sanusi Kane is out there? So that's another chess piece that you have to kind of move around and figure out, hey, is this going to work for us? So as far as Cleveland goes, I mean, they didn't do a whole lot against the Bengals. They couldn't run the ball at all. Joe Flacco made some good throws.
well, they're going to be in
Great.
3rd and 6, 3rd and 8, 3rd and 10, and then they're going to have to make a play. And Joko, like they're going to have to move the
Sure.
chains that way.
Oh, and I think the interesting, you mentioned David Njoku, who was a absolute target monster 2 years ago when Joe Flacco took over at quarterback for them down the stretch. He was throwing to him and Amari Cooper, who just announced his retirement really recently, instead of playing for the Raiders. But the guy to watch besides Njoku is also their rookie tight end, Harold Fannin, who he was very involved with what they did on Sunday. So you're looking at tight ends. I think they're going to throw to their backs. Dylan Sampson was pretty active in terms of a receiver out of the backfield.
Everything that Joe did well 10 years ago, he kind of still does well.
Yeah,
And how do you build
that's what
around
he
that?
likes to do.
You know how you build around that? You get 4 yards on first down running the ball.
Sure.
Yeah.
So is this a Browns offense that the Ravens should fear? Absolutely not. But the Ravens are in no position right now to be puffing out their chest on defense whatsoever, right? I mean, you've got to earn that right.
Go get your 4 downs to get the ball back, and we'll talk about it on Sunday,
exactly.
right?
So they should win. They better win. But I said the same exact thing about the Las Vegas Raiders coming into town week 2 last year, and we saw how that turned out.
It's never easy with the Cleveland Browns. Luke is here. He is Baltimore Luke. He's out in Owings Mills. We're going to have you covered for game time, 1 o'clock on Sunday. We've been doing a lot of baseball this week as well as getting you ready with the Cleveland Browns. You have the 75 Colts coming to town. Lydell Mitchell's going to be on the show here this week. So you can find it all out at Baltimore Positive. You can also find me on Tuesday doing the Maryland Crab Cake Tour. We'll be at the Beaumont in Catonsville. My man Pat Young coming by, Councilman Pat Young running for Baltimore County Executive. So I'm going to catch up on some things Southwest side. Also a military guy. So I'm going to talk to him about military stuff and occupations of American cities by our military. It's been a lovely week around here, starting with the loss on Sunday. Although Saturday night was okay, but the Orioles are still in last place, and Paul Skeens pitched on Wednesday night, and I missed it. I am Nestor. He is Luke. We are WNST, AM 1570. Taos of Baltimore, getting you ready for football at home, and 30th anniversary, and the Browns coming to town. Stay with us.